All right, perfect timing. The instructions are over, meaning it's time for the closing arguments in the case against Daisy Lake. Let's go into the Miami, Florida courtroom and listen as the prosecution kicks it off.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, on June 25th, 2022, Pedro Jimenez was murdered. He was murdered by his 9-year relationship, his spouse, his wife, his defendant, Daisy Lake. Earlier that day, Pedro Jimenez was picked up by friends. Miss Link knew that. He went over there and was there for a very long time. And that made Miss Link angry. He wasn't home. He wasn't spending time with her or his children. He was with friends. He's a trucker. He's never home. Why aren't you spending time with me? Her mother's there. Her children are home. Her mother flew in for a barbecue. Why aren't you spending time with me? And so what does she tell her mother? I'm gonna go pick this idiot up. He's probably drunk off his ass. And she goes. She's not afraid. She goes there, unafraid, uninvited. And she waits outside, and minutes pass. And she asks Pedro, where are you? And he doesn't respond. And so she goes inside to look for him, unafraid, not scared, uninvited. She sees him, and he says, I'm coming, I'm coming. And she pulls him out of the house and takes him home. Their home. Not her home, but their home. And then they go and get beer. And they continue acting like a family. A toxic family. No doubt about that. We were the first ones to tell you it was a toxic family. We're the first ones to speak. We're the last ones to speak. It is our burden. But we were very upfront with you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. This is a toxic relationship. Two people that should have never been together. Ms. Link said Pedro Jimenez was a good guy. I disagree. I don't think he was a good guy. But he didn't deserve to be murdered that day. And so they fight. Why? Because Pedro has his suspicions. He accuses her of cheating. He's never home. This is his wife of 9 years. And he accuses her of cheating. And she denies it. And they continue fighting. And then he backs off. And he accuses her again. And they fight about that. And then he backs off. And they continue fighting. Over and over again. Until Pedro gives up and leaves. Miss Link already had the gun at that point. And she goes outside to smoke her cigarette. And Pedro comes home. And she sees him. And she says, you know what? I'm done with this. You're never home. You're not around our kids. My mom's here for a barbecue. Which, mind you, happened earlier that day that he missed. You know what? You're right. I did cheat on you. And what does Pedro say? She's holding the gun at that point. He says, as she's pointing the gun at him, do it. Do it then. I want to die. I gave you everything. His voice drops, and he turns and starts walking away. And then he realizes, as the gun is pointing at him, that Miss Link is serious this time. We heard that they were a toxic relationship. He hit her just like she hit him. And he started to run. And she fired. And it went through his foot in an upward manner, through his thigh, hitting his femoral artery. Pedro had cocaine in his system, yes. He had alcohol in his system, yes. He had marijuana in his system, yes. But we heard from Dr. Mathis that coke actually kept him alive. He would have died faster. And so what does Daisy do? She mocks him, belittles him. It's not like I hit a major artery. You'll be fine. A couple seconds pass. As he's running away, fleeing from her, he's the one in fear. You sure you don't want to go to hospital? No. Okay. And then she tosses the gun. She goes back to where she shot, and she picked up the casing that was never found.
Objection, fact not in evidence.
So this is argument of what the lawyers believe the evidence showed you. You should rely on your memory of what the evidence was. You can continue.
And then Daisy realizes, wait, my neighbors heard that gunshot. Let me go see where Pedro is. And she goes looking for him. And she doesn't call 911. And she finds him. And he's laying on the ground. He had been running, hiding in bushes, scared. And she finds him. What does she do? She goes up to his body as he lies there dying, begging for help, asking her, pleading her, call 911.
Objection, facts not in evidence.
Sustained.
And she goes through his pockets, takes his phone, takes his identification, and walks back to the car. And she hides that stuff because she doesn't want anyone to know who he is. Because if they find out who he is, they'll figure out she was the shooter. And so finally she walks back and starts rendering aid because she realizes what's about to happen. He's about to die. And so that is the time that she calls 911. And she lies to the 911 operator. She says, I have no idea who this person is, despite being married to him for 9 years. I don't know what his date of birth is. I don't know how old he is, despite being married for 9 years. I just found this random man. I was walking around in the alley, despite being married to this man for 9 years.
Need a break. When we come back, more closing arguments in the toxic relationship murder trial for Daisy Link.
/Caesar.
Welcome back to Court TV Live, along with Julia Janae. I'm Ted Rollins. Good to be with you on this Thursday. We're in Miami this afternoon. Closing arguments are underway in the toxic relationship murder trial.
We're about to get you right inside of that courtroom. A recap on this case. Daisy Link is accused of fatally shooting her partner in the leg during an argument back in June of 2022.
The bullet hit an artery, caused his death, Pedro Jimenez. He bled to death and died at the scene. But Link took the stand yesterday, testified that Jimenez was abusive and was threatening her the night that she shot him.
So let's go into the courtroom now. The prosecution is delivering their closing argument to this jury.
Officers arrive, and she asks, and she lied, and she lied, and she lied. Officers were kind to her. They let her go back to the home. This is a spouse. She's scared. They didn't know what was going on at that time until Detective Danny Morales shows up. Seasoned homicide detective. And he sees a woman in the middle of the area. He doesn't know who she is, and he approaches her, and she becomes aggressive. In fact, that night she threw a chair at him. So he detains her, and as he detains her, as he passes her down, trying to calm her down, trying to get a hold of the situation, she starts hiding the keys in her pocket. The keys of that same Chevrolet Trax with Pedro's stuff in it that would identify him, that would link her to this crime. Eventually they bring her to the homicide headquarters. She never denies that they lived together, never denies that he lived there, never denies their relationship. Changes her story over and over and over again. Listen to it, it's an hour and a half long. An hour and a half of changing statements, of changing stories, giving more detail, taking that detail back. We gave you a transcript as well. Read it over. She changes her story over and over and over again. Officers find a firearm, that same firearm that belongs to her. The same firearm that she used to kill Pedro. And And that night they arrest her. But that's not where their investigation ends, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. They continue investigating. They find surveillance video that disproves what Daisy Link was saying. That shows Pedro fleeing, hiding, in fear. And they take it back and they try to download it. And because of the program, when it gets plugged back in, it gets deleted. And that's a shame. But it wasn't deleted on purpose. We heard the steps that they took to preserve that evidence. And old technology is old technology. But this defendant murdered Pedro Jimenez that night. So as we heard jury instructions read to you earlier, there are some rules of deliberation about how you should weigh the evidence in this case. And I want to walk through these 8 rules with you all and talk about the state's witnesses first and how you should weigh this evidence. Number 1, did the witness seem to have an opportunity to see and know the things about which the witness testified? Yes. Every single state witness was personally involved in this case or was there the night of the murder, investigated the case, talked about what they did. Each and every state witness didn't say, well, I wasn't there, I don't know what was going on. Everyone was there. Every state witness testified to that. Kevin Bonilla was at the house when Daisy showed up and walked inside to go pick Pedro up. All the detectives were on scene. Canine officers who found firearms. Everyone there saw and testified to what they did. Did the witness seem to have an accurate memory? Yes, they did. It's 3 years ago, sure. But they remembered what they did. They remembered their investigations. Was the witness honest and straightforward in answering the attorney's questions? Yes. This is a trial. There are objections. Some are sustained, some are overruled. Absolutely. But not a single state witness gave a sarcastic comment. Not a single state witness argued. Everyone was very candid with what they did, what they didn't, what they remembered, and they were honest and straightforward the entire time. Did the witness have some interest in how the case should be decided? No. 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 Does the witness's testimony agree with the other testimony and other evidence in this case? Absolutely it does, and we'll walk through the evidence in a few moments, but absolutely it does. Each step officers took agreed with the next step. They talked about how homicide teams work in teams, that there is a lead, that lead gives assignments. The blood trail is consistent with the video that Mr. Cisneros saw, that Detective Morales saw, that Detective Hubbard saw. It's all consistent. Has the witness been offered or received any money, preferred treatment, or other benefit in order to get the witness to testify? No. We heard nothing of that. Nothing. Had any pressure or threat been used against the witness that affected the truth of the witness's testimony? No. We heard nothing of that. Did the witness at some other time make a statement that is inconsistent with the testimony he or she gave in court? Not really, no. They weren't handed a deposition transcript and said, didn't you say this a couple of years ago? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So when you're viewing the state's evidence, use these rules. When you're thinking about the state's witnesses, use these rules. Importantly, as we heard, as I talked about, as we have all talked about, my burden in this case, I have to prove this case to you. It is my job and my job alone to prove this case. My burden is a reasonable doubt. A reasonable doubt is not a mere possible doubt, a speculative, imaginary, or forced doubt. That is my burden. Just like we talked about in jury selection. If it's wet outside and we heard thunder and it's wet for miles and miles and miles, it is reasonable to believe that it rained. It is not reasonable. We have to imagine, speculate, force ourselves, pretend that a fire truck came and sprayed it for miles and miles and miles. That doesn't happen. A reasonable doubt as to the guilt of the defendant may arise from the evidence, conflict of the evidence, or lack thereof evidence. And that's a really important point. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Now, as the judge read, as you have in your hand, second-degree murder, and we talked about this in a little bit during jury selection. What do I actually have to prove? What are the elements of second-degree murder? Number one, Pedro Jimenez is dead. Number two, the death was caused by the criminal act of Daisy Link. And number three, there was an unlawful killing of Pedro Jimenez by an act imminently dangerous to another and demonstrating a deprived mind without regard for human life. An act includes a series of related actions arising from and performed pursuant to a single design or purpose. An act is imminently dangerous and demonstrating a deprived mind if it is an act or series of acts that a person of ordinary judgment would know is reasonably certain to kill or do serious bodily injury to another, is done will from ill will, hatred, spite, or evil intent, and is of such a nature that the act itself indicates an indifference to human life. And importantly, I do not have to prove intent that she wanted to kill him that night. If it meets those three elements in order to convict of a second-degree murder, it is not necessary for the state to prove the defendant had the intent to cause death. Merely these three elements. So let's talk about these three elements and how the state proved beyond a reasonable doubt these three elements. The first, as you heard, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, there is a stipulation in this case. Pedro Jimenez is dead. There is no disagreement there. And you must take that as true. So, the state has proven, beyond a reasonable doubt, the first element. We're a third of the way there already. 2 and 3, the death was caused by the criminal act of Daisy Link, and there was an unlawful killing of Pedro Jimenez by an act imminently dangerous to another and demonstrating a deprived mind without regard for human life. I'm going to take these two together. I think it's important to talk about these two together. And importantly, we should talk about the timeline in this case. There was a lot of testimony about what the timeline is, when they found a gun, when they didn't find a gun, when Daisy admitted to the crime. The timeline is really important. June 25th at 3:06 a.m., a Ring video starts recording. At 3:11, a gunshot is heard. Daisy tells Pedro, "It's not like I hit a major artery, you'll be fine." Couple beats. "You sure you don't want to go to the hospital?" "No, okay." No fear, no adrenaline like she testified to, nothing. Calm as a cucumber.
That was a little much. Sorry about that.
Louder for us maybe than the jury.
Yeah, and hopefully at home didn't jar anybody. Let's get a break. When we come back, we'll have more of the state's closing argument against Daisy Link from Miami, Florida. Stay with us.
I'm going to ask you a lot of intensely personal questions. How do you explain it? The worst crime anyone can imagine. Do you feel like you took the fall for this murder? Tell me in your own words, what happened? Let's get started.
Interview with a Killer. New season premieres Saturday, October 25th. Only on Court TV.
When Pedro was killed, he didn't have a knife, right?
No.
He didn't have a gun?
No.
You're the only one that was armed, right?
Yes.
You actually had the deadly force in your hands before you killed him, right?
Yes.
You waited to call 911, right?
Yes.
You knew you shot him?
Not at first.
As you walked on camera that we saw on State 16,
we heard you actually say, you'll be fine. It's not like I hit a major artery. You'll be fine, right?
That's not what I said.
That was Daisy Link on the stand, attempting to inform the jury her point of view when she shot and killed Pedro Jimenez. I mean, she admits she did it, but there was a big backstory that she was able to convey.
Yeah, she says that she had to shoot him during that argument where she says he was threatening to lock her out of the house where her kids were. She said he was not welcome there. And the medical examiner says he was hit in the back of his foot through his thigh, and it hit a major artery. Let's go back into the courtroom now. We're listening to the prosecutor's closing argument. They were trying to show some body camera footage to this jury. Let's pick it up where we left off.
Pissed off as hell. Not adrenaline, calm. And what's important about this too, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I want to take a moment and discuss Pedro's statement before she shoots. Do it. I want to die. I gave you everything. That is a man who is broken by his wife of 9 years. It is not him charging at her. It is not him screaming at her. This isn't an assisted suicide. This is, you're pointing a gun at me. Nobody says, do it, I want to die, while there's a gun below you, hanging off the side. This is a man who has a gun in his face, steps away from this defendant. Do it then, do it. I want to die. I gave you everything. You broke my heart. You just told me you're cheating on me. This is a toxic relationship with domestic violence going back and forth. And you know what Miss Link did? She lit a match and lit that fire that night because she wanted this relationship to be over, and this was the best way to do it. This was a broken man. Maybe a drug addict, never home, not really seeing his kids all that much. A broken man. He just found out that his wife was confirming his suspicions the entire time. 3:21, 10 minutes pass. Daisy Link calls 911 and lies about who he is, who she is, and everything else.
Today, June 25, 2022, 03:21 and 57 seconds.
I'm an executive and fire. What is the working? Hi. Yeah. I don't know. I just hear about sleeping in the house and just go everywhere.
Okay, that on my list. I'm trying to call to see where you are.
Okay.
Do you know what happened to him?
I have no idea. He's bleeding everywhere.
Is he awake and breathing? And looks like you're at 1300 1858 711.
Where?
Are you in Homestead now?
Yes, I know that.
What is the phone number you're calling from?
76 562 9539.
7656-9539. So let me get Homestead Police on the line as well. Either regarding as well.
Lie after lie after lie after lie after lie. 3:27, 6 minutes. 6 minutes after she calls 911, Officer Nicholson arrives first on scene, and she lies to him. And what does she say to Pedro, despite knowing exactly what happened?
I'm in the alleyway.
Officer Nicholson asked Pedro, what happened? And she says, if you listen closely, I hit a major artery. Listen to it carefully. This is his body-worn camera. She says, I hit a major artery. That's a admission, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. She shot and fired. And it links up directly to her statement earlier, where she mocked him. It's not like I hit a major artery. She knew what she was doing. She was in.
All right, we'll get a break. First, Jack Rice watching along with us in St. Paul, Minnesota. Jack, what's your take so far in the close and overall in this case against Daisy Link?
Well, it's very interesting, Ted, because when I look at it in the first place, the real question is, well, is he dead? Yes. And in fact, the prosecutor runs through this. And then the question is, who shot him? Who did it? Well, that's obvious, too. I think it's going to come down to one simple question. That question is, does Daisy act like an innocent person? Does Daisy act like a victim? And as a victim, would a victim act like this and do what she did from beginning to end? And I think that's how the jury is going to sit with this to come to the conclusion that they do.
Yeah, it doesn't help how she's been reacting, though, Jack, especially inside the courtroom. The judges even had to reprimand her for some eye rolling, and we even noticed a bit of laughter at the beginning of the prosecution's closing argument. The jury's watching.
Oh, they miss nothing. And you've been in so many courtrooms, all of us have, and you watch this, and sometimes I think people get in their own heads so deeply that they're thinking about what they're thinking about. The problem is that juries will take anything that they see and they will run with it. If they feel like this person may be guilty, they'll start seeing guilt in every movement, in every eye roll, in every smirk, in every smile, in every laugh. And this just is a confirmation bias. And when you have the kind of evidence that they have in a case like this can just be sort of more on the pile. And that's the reason we spend so much time telling our clients as defense attorneys, remember, you've got to watch your behavior, your body language, your facial expressions, everything.
Absolutely. Let's get a break. When we come back, more of the closing arguments in the case against Daisy Link. Plus, Court TV's Matt Johnson joins us live to get us up to speed on our next live trial. And this is an interesting one. Stay with us. Welcome back to Court TV Live along with Julia Janae. I'm Ted Rollins. Good to be with you. Before we head back to the courtroom in Miami, a quick update out of the state of Massachusetts, where our newest live trial is just beginning this hour with opening statements.
Yeah, this one is a really unique one. Defendant Terence Crosby. He is a 38-year-old man from Ireland. He's on trial for the second time on charges that he raped a woman in a Boston hotel. And according to prosecutors, Crosby was visiting Boston with fellow firefighters at the time.
For the latest on this new trial, let's bring in Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson. Matt, let's start with what the latest is here. They're just getting underway.
Ted, Julia, this is a trial to watch. We can expect powerful opening statements and the defendant to take the stand once again. He did the first time. This is a case that has garnered international attention. The retrial of Terence Crosby, the Irish firefighter accused of rape. His first trial ended in mistrial after jurors couldn't reach a unanimous verdict after deliberating nearly 22 hours. Here's more on the case. March 14th, 2024. A night of Boston bar hopping ahead of St. Patrick's Day holiday ends with allegations of rape against a visiting Irish firefighter. 38-year-old Terence Crosby was visiting from Dublin and came to the U.S. to march in the St. Patrick's Day parade with other members of his fire brigade. He and his friend, Liam O'Brien, were sharing a hotel room when O'Brien met a woman at the Black Rose pub. According to court documents, O'Brien went back to the hotel and had consensual sex before falling asleep in separate beds. The 28-year-old woman says that she was awakened at around 2 a.m. by Crosby, who was having sex with her. She managed to get out of the hotel room and went to the Massachusetts General Hospital to get a rape kit performed and report the alleged sexual assault. Crosby was arrested the next day at Logan Airport, where he was preparing to board a flight after moving up his travel plans.
St. Patrick's Day weekend. The consulate wasn't open. He couldn't get advice from, attorneys from back home, short of going home.
Terrence Crosby pleaded not guilty, and his first trial ended with a hung jury.
Mr. Crosby is adamant that he's done nothing wrong, that he's an innocent person.
If convicted, he could be sentenced up to 20 years in prison. And jury selection just wrapped up moments ago. 12 jurors and 3 alternates will hear the case. Potential jurors were asked their thoughts on ICE, immigration, people with Irish accents, and thoughts on infidelity during the voir dire process. And that's partly because state's evidence could include surveillance video of this defendant, who is married, they'll discover, kissing another woman on the night in question.
It's a lot about the defendant and his background. What more do we know about him, Matt?
Well, Terrence Crosby is 38 years old, married with children, girls, we understand. His wife has been in court for some of the proceedings. In the first trial, again, he testified that he had no physical or sexual contact with the alleged victim. His defense attorney telling local media, quote, he is looking forward to being found not guilty and getting back to his wife and children in Ireland. Crosby is currently in custody. He was not able to post his $50,000 bond, but even if he did, he's required to stay in Massachusetts, deemed a flight risk.
Yeah, it's a fascinating case, and I've read a little bit into it. The more you read, the more you look forward to seeing how this plays out.
The second time around.
Yeah. Matt Johnson, thank you as always. Let's head back now to Florida, to Miami. More of the state's closing argument in the toxic relationship murder trial for Daisy Link.
This is not a ricochet. It didn't hit the ground and bounce up. She shot it at him as he fled. And we actually see Pedro Jimenez's last breaths ever. We watch him. His last moments on earth. His wife pretends she didn't know that she murdered him. The victim pronounced deceased at 3:40 a.m. Officer Rodriguez speaks to the defendant, who again lies to him. He left in a van. I don't know who his friends are, despite going there earlier in the day and picking him up. The van that officers wasted precious time searching for. She sent them on a wild goose chase. Later on, homicide detectives arrive. 5:40. 6:30. Daisy's sister shows up and says, well, if he's dead, Daisy did it. She knew. She knew. Because she knew that it was a toxic relationship. She knew that Daisy hit Pedro and Pedro hit Daisy. That Daisy was going to light a match eventually. She knew. Between 6:50 and 8:30, Detective Cruz canvasses the scene of Pedro's murder. They walk the scene, they take photographs, they try to figure out piece by piece what's going on. They don't find a gun. At 9:20 a.m. is when the defendant enters the interview room. And watch how aggressive she is. I'm not putting that shit. Covered in blood. Angry.
You want to keep clothes on the blood? Okay, we're going to take off the shirt. And then you take the string. If there's no blood on the shorts, then I gotta see, but I don't want you to eat from the blood. Can we stand here so I can take pictures, please?
I'm not putting that. 3:52 in that hour and a half video that you have in evidence. Why are you treating me like I did this? Why are you taking pictures of me like I did it to him? She says at 4:08, the bruises are from a car accident, which she confirmed, by the way, on the stand when I was cross-examining her yesterday. She says the bruises don't apply to this, trying to make it seem like he would hit me. Lie after lie after lie after lie. At 12:27, canines locate a firearm. I'm sorry. At 12:27, a residential search warrant is executed for Daisy and Pedro's home. And what do they find, ladies and gentlemen? Look closely. Men's shoes, men's clothing, adult men's clothing. Pedro lived there. It was his home. Same time, canines locate a hidden firearm. Hidden firearm. That was about the only honest thing she said that night, that she hid that gun. And it was her gun. And it's not until 3:39 and 4:20 that the defendant begins her interview. And we know that, not just because we heard it and we can see it on video, but the time of when she waived her Miranda rights and chose to speak to officers is actually memorialized on that Miranda form itself. Do it. You have the right to remain silent. You don't have to talk to me if you do not wish to. You don't have to answer any of my questions. You understand that, right? Yes. Should you talk to me, anything which you say may be introduced into evidence against you. Do you understand? Yes. If you want a lawyer to be present during questioning at this time or any time hereafter, you are entitled to have a lawyer present. Do you understand this? Yes. If you cannot afford to pay for a lawyer, one will be provided for you at no cost if you want one. Do you understand that, right? Yes. And then she waives. She voluntarily spoke to them. And she says a lot of very interesting things during this statement. But I think what's most interesting here is her demeanor during this. She's crying, she's sad, she's scared, until she's confronted with one of her lies. And you can actually see her demeanor change. She's not scared anymore. She's mad. You see her demeanor change when officers catch her in a lie. What if I have you on video saying, it's not like I hit a major artery, you'll be fine? Her change in demeanor is important here. What else does she tell us?
Yeah, I was angry.
I was angry. Doesn't say I was scared. Not talking about something that happened 5 days ago. I was angry. What does she say about the shooting? One of the 5 different stories she tells that night, and yesterday as well.
Okay, it was down, and then once he said, oh, you're gonna sleep outside tonight, Rich, that's when I literally just lifted it up and I just cocked it, and I shot it. It was every cock and everything. I shot it.
You catch that? It was already cocked. He says, you're sleeping outside. I lifted it and I shot. It was already cocked. She was outside, not scared. Her with the deadly weapon. We know Pedro never had the gun. We know he never had a weapon. She said as much.
All right, prosecution delivering the closing, the first half. Of course, they get the front and the end on the closing argument. The first one now being delivered. Let's get a break. When we come back, we'll have more of the state's close against Daisy Lake.
Donna Adelson was part of a conspiracy to kill her former son-in-law, Dan Markell.
He's not going to survive.
Oh my God!
Dan saw Donna as dangerous.
She's the matriarch mastermind.
She's just being a parent, not a killer.
Victim to Verdict with Ted Rollins. Season finale, Saturday night at 8 Eastern and Pacific. And during the finale, don't miss an exclusive preview for the new season of Interview with a Killer. Only on Court TV.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. We're continuing to follow those closing arguments out of Florida in the case against Daisy Link. But before we get back into that courtroom, let's quickly check in on a Wisconsin case where closing arguments are also almost underway. In this case, the Caught in the Crossfire murder trial. We just saw the defendant, 16-year-old Paris Larry Jr., on the stand.
Yeah, he is charged with first-degree intentional homicide in connection with the May 2023 shooting that killed Tatiana Zek and injured 3 others. Zek was shot in the head while she was taking out the trash following a cookout.
And Paris on the stand, he changed his mind yesterday after first saying he wasn't going to testify. He then decided today, even after his side rested, to testify. And here's what he said about that fatal shooting.
So, why did you pull out that gun and fire it?
Keyshawn, I just saw Keyshawn and Johnston pulling out guns, and I was in fear for my life.
When you got to Tyson Middle School, what, if anything, did you do with your gun?
Disposed it in a garbage can.
You ended up turning yourself in on May 10th, right?
Yes.
Why did you turn yourself in?
I don't even got a reason. I just turned myself in for the better for me.
Was there a time, did you ever talk to any family members or anybody else?
Yes.
And so after talking with your family members, was there a time when you spoke to a lawyer?
Yes.
And you told them what happened?
Yes.
And after you had that conversation, what did you do?
Turn myself in.
Yeah, he's 16 years old, and he looks a little older, but he was 14 at the time. And whether or not that'll be... he didn't technically do himself any favors taking the stand, except for in its entirety, there is an overwhelming feeling of, oof, this is a young person, apparently has some developmental disability. He was on full display.
Yeah, during cross, he fell apart. I mean, he got frustrated, and then he's just admitted that, yes, my bullet could have killed the victim in this case, which is enough for a murder charge.
Absolutely. Let's head back now to Miami. Daisy Link. It's almost to the jury here. Prosecutors and defense doing the closing arguments. Very important in this case, especially because she took the stand. She said that I shot Pedro, but I love him, and I'm sorry, and I didn't mean to kill him. But he was unhinged and out of control at the time, so it was self-defense-ish.
Yeah, prosecution has a completely different side to this. Let's pick it up where we left off. The state of Florida is giving their closing argument to this jury, saying Daisy changed her demeanor once she was confronted with the evidence.
5:03 is when she tells officers where the firearm is. 5 hours prior, though, K-9 already had located it. She wasn't being helpful. They already found it. They were already piecing the picture together. As she's being interviewed, they're doing their work. They find this ring camera footage. They find the firearm. They're doing their job. They're watching video. The defendant is eventually arrested that day, and then on June 26, a secondary canvass is conducted with other K-9 officers, and they don't find anything. They don't find the casing that Daisy Link hid, because she didn't want to get caught. We also know, based off the subsequent search, Pedro's path that night. Well, let's talk about this. We heard not from 1, not from 2, not from 3, but 4 officers about that video footage at Robert Cisneros' house. We heard from Robert Cisneros himself. It's an older model DVR, it's plugged in, it's hardwired. I saw it with my own eyes. I saw the victim running, hiding behind bushes, running and then collapsing. A woman passing by, going to his body, manipulating his body, walking away, coming back. We actually can piece together his path based off the evidence. The CSI photos, the blood spatter. We know that Daisy's house is where he got shot. I'm sorry, Daisy's house. This is the porch. And what's important is those 2 doors. She says that he was charging at her while she was on the porch. where, I don't know how, but that's what she tells us. And after he gets shot, he runs this way. And we know that from the blood spatter. And Daisy walks this way. You'll be fine. Not like I hit a major artery. You'll be fine. And he continues running. And we actually see that in that same video. And blood spatter continues. And we know, again, that he travels up through the alley till he gets to this car. Blood spatter again, before collapsing and dying. Right here. And look at where the Chevy Trax is. Look how far away it is. Daisy would have had to have walked feet after feet after feet to get to him and hide his stuff back in the car. It took her time. It was deliberate action she was taking because she didn't want to get caught. And we can also piece together Daisy's path that night as well. This is their home. She shoots and fires as he's running away from her. And she goes this way, by the trampoline. She says, not like I hit a major artery, you'll be fine. Beep, 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 beep. You sure you don't want to go to the hospital? You'll be fine, okay. And then she comes back and she hides the firearm, her firearm. She has to come back, get in her car, and drive. And she waits. She doesn't call 911. There was just a gunshot. She knows she hit him. She doesn't think she hit him where she hit him, but she knows she hit him. And so she goes to look for her husband of 9 years. She's not afraid of him. She's not scared of him. She's not thinking about an incident that occurred 5 days prior. This is a toxic relationship, and she just lit the fuse. I cheated on you, you're right. You're never home. And so she says.
Prosecutor laying it out for the jury. Jack Rice, still with us. How's he doing? And what would you do, Jack, if you're defending Daisy?
You always ask me the hard questions now. When he started, the prosecutor started, one of the things he did is he actually stated some evidence that actually wasn't in evidence. So there was an objection to it. And when I heard that, and I heard it twice, and you had that sustained by the judge, and that what I would probably come out with is something along the lines against the prosecutor would be false statements, false conclusions. And you do that because you're trying to say you can't trust all of the arguments made by the prosecutor, so you can not only emphasize but what you're arguing as the defense, but de-emphasizing what the prosecution is doing. The problem that we have here is her behavior through the interrogations, frankly, her behavior inside of the courtroom. And so what you're seeing is a mirroring of that behavior. And I think what the jury is seeing is exactly what they need to see. If they want to convict, I think they can easily do that based upon what they have. And she hasn't done herself any favors.
Speaking of the facts that aren't in evidence, there was a moment outside the presence of the jury where the prosecution wanted to bring in this jail call. And it's where Daisy Link is talking after she's been arrested, saying that she would have chopped up that expletive and spread them all over Florida if she had known how much time she was going to be facing. It was kept out. The jury does not know about that jail call. It was objected to by the defense because it was highly prejudicial and inflammatory, according to the judge. But do you think that was the right move? Is that important evidence, especially when we're talking about a self-defense claim?
Yeah, I would argue it is. I mean, it's interesting. Is it prejudicial? Yes, that's the reason I want it out if I'm a defense attorney. And at the same time, if I'm a prosecutor, that's the reason I want it in. It goes to her state of mind. It goes to what she is. It goes to how she thinks about her husband and what that means. Because she even says at one point, and this was according to the prosecution during close, that she said she was angry. She wasn't scared. She wasn't petrified. She wasn't defending herself. She wasn't defending others. She was angry. And it's the anger that drove her to make the decisions that she did. It wasn't the fear. It wasn't the petrified nature of this event or of their relationship. And you realize that kind of evidence, yes, over the top, but she said it. It's her words. I mean, it was a huge win for the defense to keep that out. Although, to be honest, I'm not so sure that the prosecution's going to need it in this case.
Part of the self-defense here is also, it's layered with, it was accidental. Like, it's self-defense that I fired the weapon because I wanted to scare him, but accidental that I hit him. I didn't think I hit him, and he got hit in the foot, and the ME did say, yeah, well, he was hit in the foot, and that can help the case. Does that layer matter?
It could matter a little, Ted, but what we really see here is that what the prosecution did was try to button that up and close that up by saying it doesn't have to be intentional. It's not that she was shooting to kill him, but the fact that she's shooting at him, the fact that she's shooting and hits him in the foot, how would one know that something's going to bounce up through your foot and actually cut a femoral artery? That's true, but you don't necessarily need the intention, and that's what makes this case even stronger for the prosecution.
Right, second-degree murder. Jack Rice, thanks so much for your analysis this hour. We've got more of those closing arguments on the other side of this break. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Pedro, what the happened? Where's the ambulance?
I told her, you know, that's it. We have to get out of here now, and I need you to, we're going to pack everything up, and we're just going to leave.
He said, I don't give a f***. I'm ready to die. You could kill me. And he began to run towards the house.
And what did you do when you see him running towards the house to lock you out?
I took the shot.
After you shot him, you actually mocked him and said, it's not like I hit a major artery. You'll be fine, right?
It's not quoted right.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae, along with Ted Rollins. Thank you for following along with us. We're beginning this hour there in Florida. The fate of Daisy Link is soon going to be in the hands of a jury. And she took the stand to testify in her own defense, saying she did shoot at her boyfriend, but it was all in an effort to scare him off, not to kill him. She says she didn't even know she would actually hit him.
Pedro Jimenez was shot in the foot, then the bullet traveled through his leg and hit his femoral artery. That is what caused him to bleed out and die. Let's go back into the courtroom now for more of the state's closing argument.
So she says, my husband of 9 years, I just shot, let me go find him. You can't take back a murder. Her rendering aid, attempting to render aid, lying to officers. Lying to officers is irrelevant. Rendering aid is irrelevant. You can't take back a murder. And she goes this way and up and back. We know she doesn't go this way, there's a car blocking it. We know it's not this way because her car ends up over here. And it's important, she goes this way, up, and she walks over to Pedro's body, turns her car off, and takes his items out of his pocket. His phone, his money, his keys. She goes back and then starts rendering aid. It took her time. These are deliberate steps that she took. The shot itself. He was running away. It went through his foot, out through his ankle, and then through his thigh. In, out, in, out. It was a clean shot. It was a good shot. The only way that shot makes sense with one shot, from what we heard from Dr. Mathis, is when somebody is running away. That's the trajectory that it took. That is the only way that that is possible. And if it missed the foot, it's still going through the thigh either way. It's still hitting that artery either way. This didn't bounce off the floor through his foot, ricocheting, and then ending up in her thigh, or his thigh. It was a good shot. Again, we can see Dr. Mathis's work. Entry, exit, through the femoral artery. And how do we know that it was Daisy's gun? Pay attention. Pay very close attention. Earlier in the day, minutes after the shot, What's in her hand? The firearm she hid. She got that gun. It was her gun. And how do we know it's her gun? Well, we heard from criminalists from the Miami-Dade Crime Lab that they tested it for DNA. And the majority of that DNA belonged to none other than the defendant, Daisy Link. And how do we know that? The statistic they came up with. 1 in 28.71 septillion that it is her DNA. Septillion, that's 24 zeros. That's not a small number. The population of Earth is 8 billion. That's 24 zeros. It's her gun. Let's talk about reasonable doubt again, and this is so important because I'm about to talk about the defense witnesses. A reasonable doubt is not a mere possible doubt, a speculative, imaginary, or forced doubt. A reasonable doubt as to the guilt of the evidence of the defendant may arise from the evidence, conflicts of evidence, or lack thereof. And so what's important here, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, there's actually no reasonable doubt for the state's evidence. But when you look at conflicts of the evidence, you should also take a look at the evidence that the defense presented. And to be clear, they don't have to do a single thing. Her attorney never has to open his mouth. I'm the only one that has to do anything. But they gave us interesting evidence, interesting testimony. And you should weigh that evidence, that testimony, the same way you weigh the state's evidence. Did the witness seem to have an opportunity to see and know the things about which the witness testified to? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We heard from her niece, Laylin, who lives in Texas, who flew to Florida 4 days prior. And what did she do? Well, I went to my aunt Crystal's house and we hung out, and then there was a barbecue a couple days later, and I saw some injuries to Daisy, but I can't tell you where those injuries are from. I don't know what day it was taken. I wasn't there the night that he was killed. Wasn't there when he got shot. She wasn't there. We heard from Crystal, same thing. Same thing. And she even admitted she didn't know if Pedro lived there or not. Crystal pretended like she knew. Or excuse me, Laylin pretended like she knew, but she was challenged on that. You're not coming in to Florida often. You live in Texas, you don't know. It's entirely reasonable to believe that when Pedro comes home, your aunt's not telling you, hey, my husband's home. She has no idea. Her mother testified as well. She left. They said it was such a dangerous situation, she left her grandchildren with such a dangerous man. She watched her daughter get choked, nearly murdered in front of her, and she leaves? It's one thing to say, I can't control this 30-year-old person. If they want to do what they want to do, they're going to do it. It's an entirely different thing, though, to leave an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old in that situation. Because it didn't happen. Did the witness seem to have an accurate memory? No. Crystal denied making a statement to Detective Morales, but then challenged. She goes, well, actually, I don't remember. They're confrontational. I think Crystal even said, how would I know? I'm not a psychic. Did the witness seem honest and straightforward in answering the question? Absolutely not. Same thing. Crystal said, I'm not a psychic. How would I know? Well, it's your sister, right? Shouldn't you know about her abusive husband? You know about the toxic relationship. You know she hits him and he hits her. But you're not a psychic? You can't put one and one together? You know your sister has a gun. I just showed you it's her gun. Did the witness have some interest in how the case should be decided? Does the witness testimony agree with the other testimony and other evidence in this case? Has the witness been offered or received any money for fear treatment or other benefit in order to get the witness to testify? Had any pressure or threat been used against the witness that affected the truth of the witness's testimony? Let's talk about Pedro Jr. for a second, and his testimony being so critical. What did he tell us? I'm here to get my mom out of jail. I'm here to get my mom out of jail. I live with my grandma. I talk to her once a week at least about this case. I make mistakes. I forget sometimes. And what happens? Grandma corrects me. Sometimes I say Daddy shot twice 5 days before, but no, Grandma, who wasn't there, mind you, corrects me. If they're willing to coach a child on what to say, it is very reasonable to believe that they have been coordinating their testimony too. They weren't there, they don't know. And a child has admitted. Children are pretty honest. And honestly, Pedro Jr. seems like a great kid. Really honest. And said, when I make a mistake about the night that my grandma wasn't there, she tells me what happened. She wasn't there. How does she know? Did the witness at some other time make a statement that is inconsistent with the testimony he or she gave in court? Absolutely. How many times did they get impeached with their own depositions? Let's talk about the lease agreement. Now this is an older one. And I want to bring to your attention 3 major things here. Tenant's email address, p89.pj@gmail.com. 2 phone numbers. Top right, my copy. My copy, not original, not a stamp, not a 501, my copy. And then right here, where it says Daisy Link, pay very close attention to this line. What does that look like? That looks like whiteout. My copy. And if you make it out, you can actually kind of see Pedro Jimenez's name right underneath it. But that's consistent with being whited out on her copy, not the original, her copy. Let's talk about the newest lease as well, Defense Exhibit D. Well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Pedro's name's not on here. But you know what's also not on here? Any signatures? How do we know this wasn't updated? There's no initialing, there is no signatures, no dates and times. How do we know? Let's talk about earlier in the night. They say that this was such a toxic family, such an evil man. Oh, I'm sorry, actually, let me back up. Daisy said he was a good guy. That's what she said, he was a good guy. Not the family, though. They came to rescue her, but they waited 4 days. They were there, they were having a barbecue. They flew in the middle of the night. They left their grandchildren at home, watching that. Earlier in that day, after Daisy picked Pedro up, on her own volition, mind you, Pedro holding a beer. Who shows up? His children, her children, their family. They are a family. No fear, not being scared, they are a family. Even later, the victim returns to the car. Probably left some stuff in it. After all, he rented that vehicle.
All right, we'll get a quick break, and then the rest of the state's first portion of their closing argument in the case against Daisy Link. Stay with us.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a parent's worst nightmare. A 5-year-old girl left unrecognizable after she was brutally beaten by other children. We'll dive deeper into this tragic case.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
Donna Adelson wasn't a regular mother.
She's the matriarch mastermind.
She's just being a parent, not a killer.
Victim to Verdict with Ted Rollins. Season finale, Saturday night at 8 Eastern and Pacific.
Only on Court TV.
Come.
Back to court in Miami in just a minute, but first, here's a quick look at some of the other cases we're tracking on this Thursday on Court TV. In Wisconsin, closing arguments begin soon for a teenager accused of killing a young woman who got caught in his crossfire while she was taking out the trash.
And in Massachusetts, opening statements are happening right now in our newest live trial for an Irish firefighter accused of raping a woman while she slept. This was over the St. Patrick's Day weekend last year in Boston.
And we are standing by in Minnesota, where next hour, a woman who killed 2 young Amish girls while high on meth will be sentenced.
We'll keep you updated on all of these trials throughout the day. Let's head back now to Miami, Florida. We are watching the closing arguments for the toxic relationship murder trial. The defendant is Daisy Link, and we're hearing the remainder of the state of Florida's closing argument.
Who walks back to the courtroom? Pedro and Daisy. I showed you this a few minutes ago, but pay attention to what's in Daisy's hand. That same gun. Her gun. Daisy told us an interesting lie yesterday, and her mother did too. That is completely refuted by actual evidence. They said that Pedro punched through a wall and opened this door. Well, good thing we have photographs. Tell me where the broken window is. Even if he punched through that. Look, I'm not the biggest guy in the world. I don't believe in superheroes. I don't think Pedro is Mr. Elastic. He can't open that door from there. There's no broken window. There's no punch window. That didn't happen either. Lie after lie after lie after lie. Another really important thing. Let's talk about what happened 5 days prior. I believe something happened. Hell, we have pictures. I absolutely believe something happened. But not what Daisy said. Not what Pedro Jr., who was coached on what to say. How do we know that? Well, Daisy actually told us. She has cameras. They record things. That would have happened on or about the 20th or 21st. And what's really interesting here is the conveniences. It is really convenient. We have the 18th. We have the 22nd. And then the night of the murder. This is from her phone. Isn't it convenient how that video doesn't exist? Isn't it convenient? What actually happened that night, ladies and gentlemen of the jury? What actually happened that night?
I was mad as fuck.
That's what happened. She was mad as fuck. Pedro's never home. He's on the road all the time. He's off getting high. I was mad as fuck. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt the death was caused by the criminal act of Daisy Link. She pointed the gun. It was already pointed at him when he made those statements. And he fled and he ran and she fired. She actually made a very surprising admission yesterday when she said that she didn't think she was going to hit him. She pointed and fired with purpose. She said yesterday, it was contradicted by her own statement, which is full of its own contradictions over and over and over again. I didn't think I was going to hit him. Say it's proven beyond a reasonable doubt, element 2. Element 3, there was an unlawful killing of Pedro Jimenez by an act imminently dangerous to another and demonstrating a deprived mind without regard for human life. Pointing a firearm and shooting it is imminently dangerous. Deprived mind, I don't know what's more deprived than after you shot someone, mocking them. You'll be fine. Not like I hit a major artery. You'll be fine. After breaking this man's heart and lighting that fuse. Let's talk about lesser included offenses. Let me back up. After the state has proven element 1, element 2, and element 3, the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty of second-degree murder. As you heard, there are lesser included offenses in this case. Lesser included offenses are offenses that make up the actual charge, but they're smaller. There's less there. And as you heard, in this case, it's manslaughter. What do we have to prove for manslaughter? That Pedro Jimenez is dead. That, we all agree on. You have to take that as true. We all agree. And 2, Daisy Link intentionally committed an act or acts that caused the death of Pedro Jimenez. She lifted the gun, she pulled the trigger as he ran. That is an act and caused the death. We heard Dr. Mathis say, cause of death, manner of death, homicide, gunshot wound. Daisy Link did that. I've already proven to you, beyond a reasonable doubt, that this is a second-degree murder. But I've also proven manslaughter as well. Aggravation of a firearm aggravation of a felony by carrying a firearm. This is important too because you will have a verdict form that you will have to make certain decisions on. If I've proven my case, you must make the determination beyond a reasonable doubt that Daisy Link actually possessed the firearm during the commission of the crime. She's admitted that. Whether the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Daisy Link discharged the firearm, she's admitted that. Whether the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Daisy Link discharged the firearm and doing so caused death or great bodily harm to Pedro Jimenez, he's dead. Proven that. This is really important too, justifiable use of deadly force. Self-defense, that's what this case is. That's the defense that they have put on. The defendant was justified in using deadly force if she reasonably believed that such force was necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to herself or another, or the imminent commission of a burglary to a dwelling or false imprisonment against herself. I'm not going to talk about those because there's no evidence of those. But let's talk about imminent for a second. I had a conversation with Mr. Cruz during jury selection. I threatened him, remember? We were at Publix in the line. I cut him, he said some words to me. I said, I'll see you outside. I lifted my shirt, I showed him my gun. Imminent, it is happening right there, right then. Not 5 days before, not hours before, right then, right there. There was a lawyer on the panel who mentioned a bus 200, 300, 400, whatever it was, feet away. And he said, that is imminent. No, it's not, because there can be an intervening cause. Car accident. Imminent, right away. So as the judge showed you, your verdict form will look a little like this. I couldn't fit in the signature line for the foreperson in the date of crime, but this is what you'll get. This is something you'll get. And you're gonna have to make a decision here. Guilty of second-degree murder, guilty of manslaughter, or not guilty. Well, again, I've proven my case beyond a reasonable doubt. So you check off second-degree murder. And as we talked about already with the aggravation of a firearm, she did actually possess a firearm, she did discharge a firearm, and she did cause death. That's what your verdict form will look like, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, because there is only one verdict in this case that is consistent with the evidence, consistent with the facts of this case. And the only verdict that justice demands, and that's this defendant, Daisy Link, is guilty of second-degree murder. Thank you.